Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The first hit on the door rattled our glasses. Water kept running in the sink like nothing changed. I moved before my husband did, bare feet on tile. Another hit. A voice I knew too well paused outside. "I'm Anna, 30. Breathing slow so I don't shake." I set the chain and cracked the door 1 inch. 2 silhouettes filled the hallway like a bad dream. Flowers knocked against the frame, then a small suitcase nudged in. "Open up." My father's jaw barely moved. My mother held the bouquet higher like a permit. My husband stood behind me with a towel clenched. I kept my foot braced against the door edge. "You're late by 5 years." My voice surprised me. "We came to fix it." Her eyes slid to the floor. 5 minutes. He set the suitcase upright like a claim. Upstairs a neighbor coughed. Thin walls, quick audience, bad odds. I tightened the chain and checked the peephole again. No one else in the hallway, just them breathing hard. My phone buzzed once in my pocket and stopped. "Say it here or leave." I angled my shoulder for strength. He pressed 2 fingers against the door like a pledge. "We'll be quiet." The words sounded rehearsed and fragile. She lifted the flowers and winced when a thorn caught. A single petal dropped near my toes, small and bright, then still. "Why now?" My knuckles went white on the frame. Something happened. Her mouth trembled around the consonants. "To who?" The question came out flat and sharp. He glanced toward the stairwell like escape mattered more than truth. My husband reached past me and shut off the faucet. Silence pooled fast and heavy, no cover, no mask. He leaned close to my ear without touching. "Your call," he whispered, and the word burned. I unhooked the chain 1 notch and waited. Hands visible. Old instincts took over before sense returned. They raised their palms at once, guilty and careful. "No yelling," I said, and watched their throats work. We stepped into the hallway with the door open. No shoes, no coat, just adrenaline carrying me forward. He slid the suitcase back with 1 heel and swallowed. "We want to talk inside." His thumb pointed toward our light. "Not inside." I jerked my chin toward the elevator lobby. Neutral ground with distance felt survivable tonight. She nodded too fast and started walking, heels biting, pace clipped. I followed because closing the door felt like surrender. On the lobby bench, she tried to pass me the bouquet. I didn't take it, and the stems sagged like wet rope. He sat on the edge and bounced once, nerves and calculation. 5 minutes, I reminded them, and the number felt dangerous. "First," I said, and held up my phone between us. "Speak 1 sentence that explains your arrival." She swallowed air and looked to him for rescue. He blinked hard, then lifted his eyes toward mine. "We regret the wedding day." His voice scraped something old. "We want to make amends before it's too late." My pulse jumped at the phrase I refused to unpack. "Too late for what?" I asked, and his eyelids fluttered. She gripped the bouquet until a stem snapped clean. "I have letters," she whispered, and tapped her bag twice. "Not here." I stood, and the bench sighed in relief. "Diner on the corner. 10 minutes. No detours." He rose slow like the floor tilted under him. "We came straight from the station," a small truth tossed forward. "Then you can walk 2 blocks without collapsing." I stepped back toward the elevator and held their eyes. "Leave the suitcase." My husband's voice carried from our door. He had followed us without a sound until now. Their heads turned in unison like a habit they couldn't break. "Keys out, hands empty, and keep your voices down." My mother set the bouquet on the bench with care. My father nudged the suitcase to the wall and exhaled. No one touched me. No one looked away. 10 minutes, I said again, and the doors slid open. I hit the corner and spotted them through the glass. They were already in a booth, back straight, hands clenched. I stayed outside 1 breath longer and counted 10. Then I pushed through and kept my coat on. Ground rules. I slid into the seat opposite them. No scenes. No touching. 1 clear answer per question. He nodded once and fixed his gaze on the tabletop. She unzipped her bag, slow, like every inch might explode. "Start with why you're here tonight." I kept my palms visible. Use 12 words or less and no riddles. Her lips moved before any sound came out. "We want to repair what we broke before we lose time." "Losing time how?" I leaned forward and watched their shoulders tighten. "Define the risk or we stop now." He rubbed his temple and chose every syllable like it hurt. "A deadline we didn't set, approaching fast." "Proof." I tapped the edge of the menu and waited. She placed a thin packet on the table without looking up. I lifted one sheet and scanned the header line. A transfer receipt to the officiant dated the morning of my wedding. My chest pulled tight, then steadied on instinct. I laid the paper back down and traced the memo field. Retainer for postponement counseling, handwritten, underlined twice. My nails pressed the laminate until they stung, good pain, sharp focus. You bankrolled a delay behind my back. I kept my voice level. He flinched and checked the doorway like someone might rescue him. We thought pressure would reveal cracks, he managed, throat working hard. You engineered cracks, I said, and let the silence press. The server hovered and glanced between our faces. Water for all, I said, not taking my eyes off them. The glasses landed with a soft thud and a quick nod. No one touched theirs until the footsteps faded. Who else did you pay that week? My fingers stayed flat. No speeches, just names and amounts. She swallowed and slid another slip from the packet. A money order to the driver marked standby with an hourly rate. I shifted in the seat and felt the vinyl grip. You arranged a stall at the curb to keep me waiting. He exhaled hard and stared at the condensation on his glass. We expected you to call us before entering the venue. You expected me to beg, I said, and watched their jaws lock. I tucked the slips under my palm and kept going. Why bring these now if you still justify them? Her shoulders sagged as if the air changed weight mid-room. Because someone contacted us last week. The words came out thin. Who? I didn't blink until she moved again. She pulled a folded note with a printed header I recognized. The officiant's office, short message, 2 lines, request to settle outstanding matters. I let that hang between us while the door chimed. A bus hissed outside, and then the quiet rushed back. Outstanding how? I asked, and traced the edge of the note. Counselor refused to keep our arrangement sealed any longer. Arrangement? I pushed my glass away and watched the condensation trail. You scheduled counseling without me to justify a pause. He lifted his hands and let them fall near the napkin holder. She insisted we record our intent as parental guidance, not sabotage. I flicked a glance at my phone and muted it. This chapter stays focused on tonight, I told myself silently. Names, dates, any other documents with your signatures. She opened the packet wide and revealed a compact stack. On top sat a draft apology with blank lines. No date, no specifics, just a template waiting for ink. I slid it back across like it burned to touch. You prepared to be forgiven before telling the whole story. The server returned with a quick smile and a pencil. Nothing else right now, I said, and he drifted away. I leaned in until our elbows nearly touched the tabletop. Someone else besides the officiant and the driver. Who? He hesitated and picked at an old scar near his knuckle. A family member, he said, and his jaw clicked once. I kept my expression still because the name could shatter focus. Which one? I asked, and my pulse climbed another rung. Your aunt, he breathed, and his shoulders rounded inward. She agreed to stall you with errands before the ceremony. The floor under me seemed to tilt then lock again. Show me her text, I said, and reached out my hand. She scrolled and turned the screen with a small tremor. A message thread popped open with a timestamp I knew by heart. Her line read, almost there, give me 10, keep Anna with you. My aunt's reply landed like gravel. Already tried, she's moving fast. I set the phone down and tapped twice for control. We end this meeting if you keep trickling details. He straightened like something inside finally chose a side. There is one more person, he admitted, eyes on the exit. Say it, I said, and held his gaze without blinking. The pastor, he whispered, and the word hung like a weight. We paid for a delay on the vows if needed. The next breath scraped my throat and refused to leave. I let my hands rest flat and counted to 4. You turned my wedding into a timed exercise with paid roadblocks. No more hedges, I added and pushed the packet aside. Tell me the trigger you plan to use. He stared at my hands as if reading a code. If you entered without calling us once, he answered slowly. Then the delay would activate and the driver would circle. And the counselor would log a concern for haste. My heartbeat steadied into a hard, slow drum. I took the glass and finally swallowed a mouthful. Cold water slid down and made the next words cleaner. You're going to repeat that on record tonight. Her spine straightened like a cable pulled tight from above. We brought a recorder in the bag, she confessed without blinking. I raised an eyebrow and let surprise flicker then fade. You thought you'd control the script again with a device. I reached for my phone and opened the voice app. The red light glowed and my thumb hovered over start. You will speak names and payments and triggers, I said. Then you will answer one final question without bargaining. His gaze finally met mine and held for 3 beats. What question? He asked, and his fingers tightened on the glass. I leaned closer until there was no soft landing left. Who taught you that breaking me would prove I belonged? I hit record and held the phone between us. Who taught you that breaking me proves loyalty? He stared at his own knuckles until the skin blanched. A workshop leader, he muttered, and my stomach climbed the rails. Name? I didn't blink and lifted the phone higher. He pressed his lips together, then forced them apart. Leaf Rowan. The syllables dropped like bolts on steel. My mother nodded once without breathing and kept her hands folded. Number. I pushed my empty glass aside and waited. She pulled a brochure from her bag and unfolded it. A hotline blared across the header with a bold slogan. I entered the digits and put the call on speaker. A neutral voice welcomed callers and asked for a code. He reached into his wallet and produced a laminated card. Family proof track. 3 words punched across the plastic. I entered the code and the line clicked twice, then silence. A new voice arrived, smooth and practiced like a radio host. This is Rowan's support, who needs guidance tonight. I held the phone closer and kept my jaw locked. We're calling about your proof drills that wrecked a wedding. The line paused long enough to feel calculated and cold. Proof practices are voluntary and self-led by participants. My mother flinched and bumped the table with her knee. Did you instruct them to use stalling tactics around vows? No answer, then a polished pivot toward privacy policies. I cut in fast before the script reset again. They recorded payments and schedules that match your course notes. The call ended with a crisp click and a dead hum. I lifted my gaze and let the quiet vibrate. Put all your receipts and forms on the table. He hesitated and then emptied the wallet and jacket pockets. Memberships, schedules, an attendance sheet with both their signatures. I snapped photos and lined the papers in sequence. Read each line while the recorder runs tonight. My mother cleared her throat and squared her shoulders. She read dates and amounts and contact names without blinking. Halfway through she hesitated over a shorter entry. Private contractor for capture service, 2 hours standby. I raised my chin and waited for the rest to land. A camera operator positioned near the entrance for emotional impact shots. Heat climbed my neck, then leveled into a steady burn. You hired someone to film me imploding on cue. He covered his mouth and dragged his palm down slow. We planned a montage for a tough love talk later. No speeches. I placed my hand over the remaining stack. Finish reading, then answer questions in order. She pushed past the entry and reached the final page. A pledge committing to future interventions under Rowan's design. I leaned back and let the booth stop my shoulders. You both swore to keep using these drills after tonight. My voice stayed even, but the recorder caught the tremor. Are you still enrolled right now? Her eyelids fluttered once, then fixed hard on mine. 1 renewal left this year, she whispered, almost without air. I held up 3 fingers and dropped one at a time. Cancel enrollment. Call the number again. On speaker. She dialed with thumbs that wouldn't stay steady on glass. The same neutral greeting rolled out over soft static. Terminate account Rowan family proof track code 44A, she forced out. A town clerk voice confirmed closure and listed a reference number. I wrote the number on the edge of a napkin. Next. Contact the operator you hired for footage. He reached for another card and stared like it stung. Name on the back, I prompted and angled the phone closer. He read the digits and the line rang forever. A message beeped and a flat voice offered a tone. Delete all files linked to my date and location, I instructed. Confirm by text tonight or I will escalate. I ended the call and slid the phone to center. You will also notify the clergy who cooperated. He winced and squeezed his eyes shut for a beat. No more pressure games. Clear the calendar you built for sabotage. My mother placed both hands on the table like surrender. What else do you require before we continue? I lifted the recorder and watched the red dot pulse. 2 more things, then you answer about that deadline. 1. You write a full admission to the community leader. 2. You reimburse any vendor you dragged into this scheme. He began to object, and I lifted a single finger. This is not a committee. This is your cleanup. He stared at the window as if hoping for daylight. She uncapped a pen and hovered over the page. I dictated language, and she wrote every word without pause. Each sentence pinned them tighter to the truth they dodged. When the last period landed, I flipped to a clean sheet. Now explain the countdown you mentioned earlier. They looked at each other, and something in him caved. He pulled an appointment slip from his pocket with trembling edges. Cardiology consult. Procedure scheduled next month, he murmured. High risk. They want family stability before operating. My breath hitched, but I kept my posture locked. Honesty buys access. Manipulation gets you escorted out. He nodded and pressed his palm to the table once. We will do whatever this takes, he rasped through clenched teeth. I set the recorder nearer and watched their faces tighten. Then start calling people and make it irreversible tonight. I shoved the recorder closer and pointed at their phone. Call the officiant now. My finger hovered above stop. He dialed with stiff hands while she stared ahead. A greeting answered on the second ring, calm and official. We need written confirmation of your delay agreement, I said. No privacy smokescreens. One line that states the condition. Static carried a pause long enough to sour my patience. All ceremonies were delayed until parental arrival. The voice yielded at last. Email that sentence to me within 5 minutes. I spelled my address and watched his eyes track each letter. My screen buzzed, and a subject line populated my inbox. It carried their program's phrase word for word, proof now timestamped. Next number. The camera operator. I kept my tone flat. He found the contact and put the call on speaker. A bored hello slid through like nothing tonight mattered. You filmed a reaction drill. Erased the files and confirmed deletion. Fine for a kill fee, the operator replied without apology. Pay it, I said and nudged my mother's card forward. Digits went through. A receipt pinged my phone at once. Send a certificate of destruction within the hour, I added. A text arrived with a file hash and a crossed folder. Not enough, I said and typed a short demand. Attach a sworn note and sign with your full name. 3 dots pulsed, then a PDF landed with a signature. Venue manager. I pointed at the next entry on the list. He frowned and pressed call while his tongue wet his lip. A brisk voice confirmed our booking history without missing a beat. Then she mentioned a flag-coded bride requires escort before entry. My spine tightened and then settled into a colder line. Lift that flag tonight, I said, calm as a wire. Also send written acknowledgement of the request originator. She hesitated, then agreed to email the file creator. Another ping. The manager named my father in the footer. He closed his eyes and braced like expecting impact now. I forwarded the message to my account for a safer record. Add it to the stack, I said, and resumed counting seconds. Driver again, I ordered, and he obeyed without comment. The voicemail greeting triggered after a long, patient ring. I left a short instruction with a deadline and escalation. Confirm mileage, standby hours, and payment source by midnight. A new number flashed across my screen before anyone breathed. My aunt's name filled the display and pulled heat to my face. I answered with speaker on and elbows locked to the table. Are they with you? She asked, breath choppy and guilty. They're here, I replied, and kept my eyes on them. I took money to distract you with errands, she blurted. I will return it and sign whatever you need. My mother flinched like the word money cut through bone. How much? I asked and watched my father's jaw clench. 1,000 in cash and a voucher, she admitted in a whisper. Wire it back to the venue and text the receipt. I'm doing it now, she said and ended the call. I slid a notepad toward my mother and tapped twice. Draft a statement admitting the amounts and the purpose. No heroic language. No justification. Use simple verbs only. She wrote fast and kept her shoulders stiff and squared. Read it aloud into the recorder. I pushed the phone closer. Her voice didn't shake as much as before, which worried me. She listed names, figures, and the planned triggers in order. I saved the file and titled it with tonight's date. My husband walked in and took the seat at my side. He glanced at the stack and then at my hands. Do you need anything? He asked under his breath. Backup, I said, and he nodded without another word. Medical countdown. I turned back and the air tightened. If I help with logistics, boundaries hold. No manipulation. No guilt calls. No surprise visits. He ran a palm over his chest and kept eye contact. Agreed, he answered, voice rough and measured like gravel. You update my spouse on your schedule and nothing beyond that. Any breach resets us to 0 without appeal, I added. He swallowed slowly and pressed his thumb into the table. My phone buzzed again with a new notification thread. The officiant sent an addendum acknowledging external influence. The venue attached a cleared flag notice with a log trail. The operator forwarded a second signed statement with a timestamp. A final unknown caller lit the screen and held steady. Rowan's support returned the call I had forced earlier tonight. I hit answer and switched back to speaker without ceremony. You attempted to terminate a client account without consent. That client no longer consents, I replied, voice like tempered glass. We will forward all materials to counsel for unauthorized claims. Forward away, I said, and lifted the recorder for emphasis. Your drills damaged a wedding. Your name is on the tape. Silence stretched, then the line disconnected without a goodbye. I let the quiet settle just enough to draw breath. Transfer reimbursement to every participant you compensated, I continued. They opened their banking app and waited for my instructions. Vendor accounts first. Then the officiant's office note. Use the exact descriptions we dictated on the statements. They entered amounts while I filmed hands and screens. Notifications stacked on my phone like falling tiles, fast and relentless. I checked each one and flagged the few that lacked details. Fix the memos. Add the reason and the case references. They corrected lines until the language matched our notes. I saved every screenshot to a folder labeled with tonight. When the last transfer cleared, we all exhaled at once. No one reached for the water that sat between us. I pressed stop on the recorder and watched the red dot fade. Outside, a bus exhaled, and the room seemed to lean forward. My phone buzzed with a new email while their shoulders tensed. Subject line read clergy acknowledgement update with a fresh attachment. I opened it and scanned the single sentence twice. External parties requested strategic delay. The letter admitted without softening. Forward that to your own accounts now. I kept the pace. They copied the address fields and hit send with shaking thumbs. I watched the outbox mark it delivered and archived. Next step, we finish the remaining calls before anything shifts. A text jumped from an unknown number with clipped punctuation. File deletion complete, the message read with a job code. I replied with one line demanding a location timestamp. 3 dots pulsed, then a geotag dropped into our thread. Good. We moved to restitution with written proof. I slid 2 forms across and tapped each signature line. Your names. Your contact info. The total you transferred. Pens scratched fast while my husband filmed their wrists. The door chimed, and my aunt stepped inside with urgency. She spotted us and approached without asking permission to sit. Her purse landed on the table like a gavel. Wire sent back to the venue, receipt attached, she breathed. Show it. I lifted my phone to capture her screen. The numbers matched, the memo carried my date. Now record a brief statement into this device. She inhaled, then spoke a tight admission with dates and tasks. The line rang on my father's phone before anyone exhaled. A hospital scheduler asked for emergency contacts for his procedure. He stared at me instead of answering the question. You will list my spouse as the coordinator. I cut in. He repeated the instruction with a hand pressed to the table. The scheduler confirmed the entry and asked for availability windows. I nodded once, and my husband gave 2 time blocks. Send the calendar invite to me directly. Use the case number. A new email arrived while the call still held. Rowan's legal department issued a cease and reconsider letter. I opened it and scrolled to a key paragraph. They threatened action if recordings reached social channels tonight. I leaned closer and felt my pulse steady into steel. Compose a reply with 3 points. I told my mother. 1. Consent revoked. 2. Harm documented. 3. Counsel copied. She typed each sentence and waited for my nod. Add this line, I said and spaced the words. We demand preservation of all materials under a litigation hold. She looked up like the ground tipped under her feet. Send, I finished and watched it leave her screen. The venue manager called back with brisk efficiency and clarity. Funds received from your aunt, she confirmed without padding. She asked if we wanted the account flag removed permanently. Yes, I answered and requested a statement reflecting the change. My father's chest rose and fell like a tide kept in check. He reached for his glass and failed to lift it. Apologize to my husband before anything else continues. He turned, swallowed, and spoke for simple sentences without adornment. No excuses. No performance. Just ownership with 2 concrete offers. He proposed cost coverage for therapy and travel for family repair. My husband nodded once and kept his hands on the table. Start with therapy funds today, I said, not looking away. The clergy's assistant phoned with a cautious cadence. The senior will issue a written correction by morning. Make it tonight with an exact timestamp, I countered quickly. Include the requesters' names and the agreed condition. My aunt flinched and dug a small envelope from her bag. She set it down and nudged it across with one finger. Inside lay a printed group chat labeled Operation Wake Call. Screenshots showed directives and timers set to my arrival. My breath hitched, then steadied like a metronome turned stern. Airdrop those images to me and to my partner. She complied, and the files flew across our screens. One message carried a photo of me at the curb. I let the frame sit for 2 seconds, then acted. You will email this thread to a secure archive tonight. My mother typed the address while avoiding her own reflection. Attach your personal apology note as the cover. The hospital texted pre-op guidance with a checklist of tasks. I skimmed it and circled the items needing signatures. Fill the consent forms that apply to you only. Leave spousal decisions to us, I added without a tremor. A man in a blazer approached our booth with confidence. Leaf Rowan, he announced, resting a card near the water. My father recoiled, and my aunt's jaw clicked tight. I slid the recorder between us and hit the red dot. You are not invited, I said, voice even and immovable. We coach families toward resilience, he answered with a smile. You orchestrated coercion disguised as care, I replied without blinking. State your policy on engineered delays at ceremonies. He shifted his stance and offered a polished anecdote. I raised a palm and cut the air clean. Answer the question with yes or no right now. His eyes hardened and then softened into professional warmth. No formal policy endorses delay tactics. The phrase came rehearsed. Do you discourage them explicitly in your materials? He paused long enough to trigger every alarm inside me. We encourage families to align timing with readiness, he offered. I leaned forward until our forearms nearly touched the table. Do you authorize payments to third parties for stalling couples? His mouth opened and closed while he searched for exit. We neither authorize nor monitor private arrangements, he parried thinly. Then you will sign a statement renouncing those practices. I pushed a form across with a blank signature block. Use your full name and your role and today's date. He glanced at my husband, then at my parents, then signed. Now read that line into this recorder. He hesitated, and the room held its breath like a trap. He read, voice smooth but thinner than before. I saved the file and labeled it with his name. He slid a brochure toward me like a last chess move. Consider a mediated reconciliation package at a reduced rate. I laughed once, short and sharp, like a snapped twig. Leave before I call security, I said, and pointed to the door. He withdrew with controlled steps and a smile that never reached anything. The booth felt heavier after he vanished from sight. I turned to my parents and tapped the table twice. We are not done until the clergy's correction arrives. My phone vibrated with a new incoming email alert. Subject: read corrective statement with a signature block attached. I opened it and scanned for the critical acknowledgement lines. They named both of my parents and the condition to delay. Forwarded to personal and shared archives, I said without ceremony. My husband squeezed my knee once under the table. Next, we organize a formal apology to the partner you targeted. I nodded and drafted a brief message to our community leader. We will deliver the signed admission within 24 hours. I turned the paper toward them and pointed at the line. Add a commitment to attend a real program unrelated to Rowan. They wrote it and looked up like expecting a sentence. Last call, I announced, and the words tightened the air. Chauffeur, clergy, videographer, venue, family member, all confirmed. Now your personal networks, I continued and unlocked my phone. You will inform your peers that you withdrew from those drills. My father's shoulders slumped and then squared like choosing a spine. He opened his social app and drafted a short notice. Read it aloud, I instructed, and watched his hands shake. He posted and stared at the screen like awaiting impact. My mother did the same with a shorter version. She hit publish and flinched as notifications started ticking. Friends reacted with question marks and worried hearts in a rush. You will answer with the recorded admission when asked, I said. A final ping arrived from the videographer with a clip. He filmed his desktop, permanently deleting the project folder. He held the camera steady on an empty directory. He raised 2 fingers to the lens like a salute. I opened a new file on my phone and organized everything. Receipts, statements, transfers, voice files, scamshots. Each piece slotted into a structure that could hold pressure. My thumb hovered over share as the night stretched, waiting. My aunt touched my wrist and whispered for careful words. Do you need a witness? I met her eyes and weighed the cost and the help. Yes, I answered and slid the recorder toward her. She summarized her role in one tight paragraph. She signed the bottom and dated the page cleanly. I photographed it and added it to the ledger. My heartbeat eased one notch while the pile grew teeth. My husband set a timer on his phone and nodded. "Midnight checkpoint," he said, eyes scanning our screens. "At midnight we stop and evaluate next steps." I agreed and watched the seconds move like disciplined soldiers. The clock rolled close and the diner thinned to whispers. I drew a line on the top page with my nail. "Once this line is crossed, we go into silence. You will follow our rules until further notice," I finished. They both nodded and kept their eyes on the documents. My phone buzzed one more time with a blocked caller. I answered and held the device where all could hear. A distorted voice promised consequences if recordings went public, then clicked. I stared at the dead screen and breathed through the surge. "New rule," I said, and felt steel settle in place. "Any threat triggers police involvement without negotiation." My husband reached for my hand and gripped once steady. The timer chimed and the booth fell into stillness. I gathered the stack and secured the top with one clip. We stood together and no one tried to hug me. "Tomorrow morning you deliver the originals to our door, and wait." They were on the doormat before 9, hands empty. My husband opened the lock halfway and waited behind me. I lifted my phone and started a fresh recording. "Place everything on the mat, then step back now." Folders stacked in a careful pile, documents, transfers, admissions. I crouched and counted each item without touching anything. "State your names and confirm these are originals." They did, voices tight, eyes fixed on my shoes. "Next step," I said, and angled the camera up. "You acknowledge no contact unless scheduled by me. Emergencies route through my partner only," I added, slow and clear. They nodded in sync and stared at the hallway fire door. A neighbor cracked her door and watched without comment. I kept my body between her and the paperwork. "Witness available if needed," she whispered through the gap. "Stand by," I answered and returned to the stack. I slid the folders inside with the toe of my boot. The chain stayed on while I checked page counts. All signatures present. All memos unflinching. No edits. "You will receive a copy once cataloged," I said, steady. "Medical updates go to him on Tuesdays and Fridays. No photos. No surprise visits. No drive-bys." My husband wrote the rule down and showed the screen. "Confirm you understand this window," he asked, voice low. "Understood." My father pressed fingers to his chest once. My mother held her breath, then forced it out. "May we apologize face to face?" she tried carefully. "Not today," I answered and waited out the silence. "Two additional conditions," I continued, eyes never leaving theirs. "Enroll with a licensed counselor unrelated to your program. Provide receipts within 48 hours to my partner. Miss one deadline and all access freezes completely." A shadow moved near the stairwell with slow intent. A man in a cap lingered like he belonged nowhere. I raised my phone and filmed his profile for records. He turned away fast and pushed the door, gone. "Any third party contacts us again, I escalate. Police, attorney, employer, whatever stops the pattern." Their shoulders dropped, then reset like bracing for impact. "I will not brief you on steps I take." My watch buzzed with a calendar alert and 3 tasks. Time to file the threat report from last night. Time to ship copies to off-site storage. Time to lock down our profiles with stricter controls. I opened the door one palm's width and paused. "Leave your phones on Do Not Disturb for 12 hours. Turn off location sharing with any group from that course. Screenshot the toggles and send them to my partner." They pulled devices from their pockets and started tapping. Screens flashed, prompts appeared, confirmations stacked fast. A final message popped up requesting a reason for changes. "Write safety review in progress," I told them without blinking. "Before you go, 2 signatures here," I said. My husband slid a consent form through the gap. "Release for recordings. Permission to share with authorities." They signed with short strokes and handed it back. My aunt arrived at the end of the corridor, breathless. She lifted a sealed envelope with both hands. "Affidavit and bank proofs," she said, voice barely above air. "Thank you," I answered and pointed to the neighbor's door. The neighbor stepped out and took the envelope like a notary. She wrote the date on a sticky and pressed it down. "I saw all parties deliver materials," she stated clearly. I recorded her words, then she retreated behind the latch. The hallway smelled like detergent and tension, decision smell. I looked at my husband and found that steady anchor. He nodded once and tucked the folders under his arm. "Ready when you are," he murmured, eyes locked on mine. I faced them and set the final frame. You will not attend the hospital without a written invite. You will not contact extended family on my behalf. You will not solicit character letters for sympathy, ever. A vibration hit my phone with a blocked number ping. I answered on speaker and kept my tone colder. State your name and reason for calling now. Silence, then the line died under its own weight. Document the attempt, my husband said, holding out his screen. I logged the time and captured the incoming route. Evidence fed the ledger like fuel feeds a generator. My parents watched the process and didn't dare interfere. Last instruction before you leave this floor. Record a 2-minute apology to my partner on my device. Use plain language. Include what you did and why it was wrong. No tears. No theater. Just facts, spoken clean and recorded. They stood shoulder to shoulder and faced the camera. They named the actions and the timing without hiding. They admitted the design with firm sentences and no hedging. I stopped the timer at 1:58, tight and complete. Now you go, I said, palm open toward the stairs. You wait for our email in 6 months exactly. If you breach our rules, we restart that clock. My mother's mouth opened, then shut with a quiet click. He hesitated like a man choosing between pride and breath. He chose breath and reached for the stair rail. They moved down one step at a time without looking back. The cat man did not return, which told me plenty. We closed the door and slid the bolt clean. The kitchen table took the folders like a courthouse. I set up 2 scanners and a shared drive. My husband labeled the first batch with a date tag. I dialed the non-emergency line and opened a case. I read the threats as written with exact punctuation. I uploaded the recordings and the signed releases. The operator assigned a number and promised follow-up procedures. We built a binder with tabs for each participant. Clergy, driver, operator, venue, course leader, aunt, parent 1, parent 2, witness. Evidence settled into order and the air finally thinned. The hospital portal pinged in the corner of the screen. Pre-op required confirmation of caretaker details within 48 hours. I added my husband's number and set my status as optional. We agreed to revisit after compliance held for a month. My aunt texted from the sidewalk with a simple photo. Empty hallway. Closed stairwell. No lingerers. She added a thumbs up and a single line. I'm available for depositions, she wrote, steady and clear. I stepped to the sink and let the water run. Not for comfort, for noise while I thought. We had built a firewall that didn't need affection. It needed discipline and proof, every single time. My husband leaned beside me and asked one question. Do you want to keep the flowers or toss them? I looked at the wilting stems on the chair. Bag them for evidence, I answered and reached for gloves. We returned to the table and set the final rule. If they stayed clean for 6 months, we would consider coffee. Not a reunion. A checkpoint with structure and exits. If they slipped once, the door locked for good. I sent one email to them both from our archive. Subject line read protocol and next steps with attachments. I listed deadlines, formats, and the silence period. I ended with 2 words that left no room, understood. The reply arrived minutes later with a single syllable. Yes. Short, controlled, almost careful enough to trust for a day. The clock started, and the tape kept rolling on purpose.